a couple of Nora Ephron movies, but then what you probably don't know about is that wonderfully, it was so much fun for me. I got to score 2 movies for Disney, which were Winnie the Pooh movies. The story of Piglet and the story of Heffalump. And they both came out as theatrical releases. And so I became the characters. I became Roo and Tigger and Kanga and Rabbit and Pooh. I mean, I was all of them. And then eventually Heffalump. And so I got to do the emergence of some of the story of Winnie the Pooh that had never been there, which was in the movie Heffalump, because that they actually wrote that wasn't based on the A.A. Milne book.
That's going to be a lot of work too to put something like that together, right?
Especially that when you have to send the animation to Japan, and then you have to lose a millisecond of a song, and then I got to go back and do it because I was doing it on Martha's Vineyard, and they were doing it in Japan and in Los Angeles. There are so many animators connected to Disney films, and you have to put the songs really to the characters while they're doing their little jumps and they're eating honey and
Yeah, and I guess that's real deadline stuff too. You don't just get to take as much time as you would probably
certainly
like
not.
to. Yeah.
No, and I wonderfully, when I was sitting in Martha's Vineyard, I was connected to a television that was in the boardroom of Disney, of the people who were responsible for the film. And I just remember it was just me, and then it was them, and there were about 10 people in the boardroom, and we'd be having these discussions, and I would say, no, I really like this song. Well, it just doesn't work, they would say. I mean, one person would get to say, well, it just doesn't work, and everybody else's heads were bowed down. And I remember with Heffalump, I really argued. They wanted to call the baby Heffalump Lumpy, which they eventually did, of course, because they're right and they're in control and something. And I didn't like the name Lumpy. And I remember sitting in my tiny little studio on Martha's Vineyard down the hall from my bedroom, and the board on the TV screen that was hooked up into the bedroom, and they were all down. They were all there with their heads down.
So you're not easy to direct. Did Ben have a little easier job with you? Was he able to pull some things out of you? You guys worked.
We fought.
Did you really?
We definitely fought like cats and dogs. It was, or like mother and son.
Yeah.
But the great thing about fighting with Ben is that, or at least with me, is we get over it instantly. Ben is one of the people who can apologize, and I'm an apologizer. People who can't apologize, I feel really sorry for, because they probably, the other person that they can't apologize to probably holds a big grudge against them, and they hold this resentment. And it's just, it isn't worth it. Apologies, it's nice to have a big fight and then an apology afterward. It makes you feel like you're living.
And if you're going to work together, these things are going to come up. I guess
Definitely.
You're just going to, everybody wants to go in a different direction sometimes, and sometimes it takes a day or two to realize, he might have been right about it.
Yeah, well, not only that, but that there's not only one point of view. And Ben was able to get vocals out of me that I didn't want to give him. I mean, on You're So Vain, just to keep with You're So Vain for a minute, I was singing You're So Vain, and when it goes up to that, because it jumps like an octave, da ba 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 ba, I didn't want to do that. I just thought, I can't do that. I can't get that note out. And so at first I was singing it, you walked into the party like you were walking onto a yacht, but kind of, it was groovy in a way. I mean, it really was. But then Ben really got the high notes out of me. Ben said, no, we've lost the guitar solo, we've lost the intro piano, this is a really different version, but give us that original melody. And so it was Ben's choice to do that, and Ben really got it out of me when I didn't want to do it. I practiced and did my vocal exercises, and one day in his studio at his house, he just said, go for it. And he said, go for a lot of things. And for a lot of things, he really taught me the phrasing, I mean, he was a real producer. There were 5 of us who were producing the album, and we called ourselves Paphiopedilium, which is the name of an orchid, which is shown on the back cover of the album. It's an orchid that happened to have been named after me by an orchida, and it's called Paphiopedilium. The actual orchid is called Carly Simon, but there were really 5 of us producing it, being able to put it all together. Larry Chauncia, who's Ben's partner, who is the owner of the record label Iris, which is the label that this album is coming out on, is an independent label. And Larry was definitely one of the producers, and the executive producer, but also did a lot of the musical producing. And David Saw, who was a producer sort of while we were in England, but also he came up with a lot of the ideas for. I was not in England, by the way. I just want to point that out. Mm-hmm. He was in England and calling in directions and songs and song lyrics and played the guitar. And Peter Kalo, who was my guitarist for a long time, played the guitar and had a lot of musical ideas, and from the musical standpoint of view was very important in the production. And so it was Peter, me, Larry, Ben, and David is Paphiopedilium, just the way the Glimmer twins is Keith and Mick.
For you also have to ask this audience now to take this ride with you that, all right, you've all enjoyed these songs done in a certain way. Now, have loose knees and move over a little bit and see it this way.
Yeah, and I've had really good response to it.
That's great.
People don't say, well, what, I missed that. Nah, nah, nah. I mean, some people do. Yes, I mean, obviously some people do. And maybe the first time you hear, You're So Vain without the piano intro or the guitar solo, but there's something else replacing it that's just as interesting and weird and good. And I mean, I'm really proud of it. And Anticipation has a whole other resonance when I say these are the good old days, as you will hear it, I mean, if you play that song, you'll definitely hear it's a whole different emotion. And Loving You's the Right Thing to Do has a very, I mean, almost spiritual thing that happens at the end of the tune. We go to kind of a hallelujah chorus, which is just so beautiful. It's just, I mean, I when we were mastering the record up with Bob Ludwig at Gateway Mastering, when he heard that hallelujah, which is mainly, it's these deep voices mostly provided by Ben. Bob Ludwig, who has heard many a record, actually stood up and had to kind of just stand up and appreciate it and almost be the conductor when Ben comes in and sings hallelujah, hallelujah. And it's just really beautiful. And, it's one of the songs that I wrote I wrote it on an airplane, looking at James Taylor and just thinking, just no matter what you do, I love you now and I'll love you always.
Carly Simon, thank you so much. And I can't tell you how great it is to see you still so passionate about the music too.
I am.
It's really life affirming.
If nothing else, I am passionate.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.